If you've been fired and feel lost, I've been there. I know exactly what it's like to be in a state of fear and doubt. In this video, I'll share the 3 biggest mistakes most people make when they get fired and the one simple life hack that turned it all around for me. Hello, it's Sarah Christine here. If you're already a part of our tribe, then you know the drill. Feel free to skip ahead to the goods. But for those of you who are just joining our community, welcome. Here's a quick 411 on myself. I've been supporting people to live radiant lives for over 2 decades. Before my life as a coach and mentor, I was an executive at Disney, competed for Team USA and won a silver medal in the World Championships, and worked as a CX strategist for big brands from Microsoft to Mattel. Hands down, the biggest game changer I witnessed among my clients and myself is having self-awareness. The more self-aware I became, the more success I achieved. Something I teach as a core principle of my coaching program, CX Yourself. You see, even in life's toughest moments, be it getting fired, enduring heartbreak, or facing personal and business losses, there's always a silver lining. The magic is in capturing the gems and then activating them to get the life you want. And my coaching style? I'm all about those quick, simple, short tips, tricks, tools, and hacks to make being more self-aware easier and effective. There are no hard and fast rules, no one size fits all. It's all about uncovering your superpower and embracing the fluidity of your own life. So if you're ready to venture beyond the usual and embrace the exciting and the risky to get the life you really, really want, you're in the right place. Now back to the goods. Yeah, I was fired. It was a huge blow to me and my ego. And I spent thousands of hours and my time, and I poured my heart into this place, into the team, into the work. And I really thought I was being of service and I was doing good and I was working my way through. And then I got fired. And there were various reasons, right? There always are. It's not one or the other. That's what I've learned. But the biggest thing, I felt so embarrassed. I felt really ashamed. And how could this be happening to me? How could this be happening to me? And I know I'm not alone out there when I say this, because being fired, at the time, it was way worse than anything. It was, I'm a great worker and I'm really showing up and I'm doing all the things that my team members and my leader wanted me to do. How could I be fired? But instead of letting it beat me down, I decided to flip it on its head, as I usually do with things like this, because it's like taking something that's super negative, that's seen in society as incredibly embarrassing, shameful. I felt all those feelings, and then looking for the possible opportunity out of this. So I learned that this may not be happening to me, that this may be happening for me. And that was a really tough lesson, because I really felt like this was happening to me. And I really felt justified in my anger, and I felt really alone, and I felt really ashamed, because if you were like me, I didn't know anybody that had been fired. And so my tribe was not in the know of what to do next. So going through this process, I learned 3 big things. The number one biggest mistake was panicking. Don't panic. I was feeling humiliated? Yes, for sure. Embarrassed? Yes, for sure. Shamed? Yes, for sure. Thought that I was doing well? Yes, for sure. Was this a surprise? Absolutely. But it's totally natural to feel that way. But the biggest thing was not letting panic rule me, because the first things first was, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell everybody? What am I going to do? Okay, I need to figure this out and start looking for jobs and moving the energy and getting something going. And the biggest thing I realized is, again, this is an opportunity, not a curse. And it took a hot minute, because I recall I called my friends and I called my family, and a friend met me for coffee, and I was totally scared. And I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. And the first thing that she said was, "Are you panicking? You should totally be panicking." I was like, oh my God, because she's like, "Why are you not panicking?" Because I was actually pretty reserved at the time, because I was still processing everything that's happening. And honestly, that's the last thing that I needed, Why? Because panic magnifies shame and embarrassment. Panic makes me feel like I am unworthy and that, yeah, I deserve to be fired because I'm a loser. And I'm like I don't have enough. I don't do enough. I didn't get enough. Oh, I didn't get the memo, or I wasn't fitting in, or whatever. And I was starting to self-deprecate, right? Start taking things out on myself. And that's what panicking really does. It just really amplifies all of those feelings of shame and embarrassment and humiliation. So for me, that was the exact last thing I needed. So the number one thing that I learned, don't panic. The biggest mistake is panicking and trying to take action from a place where I was emotionally charged. So remember, when these things happen as life is in session, and when the perfectionism kicks in, when the humiliation, when the embarrassment, right? Because how could this ever happen to somebody like me? How could this ever happen to someone like you? The last thing you need is to panic. So don't panic. Trust the process. This is happening for you, not to you. The biggest mistake, number 2, living in shame. Shame. Oh my goodness. What a huge emotion. It's super packed, right? And it's got a lot of stuff attached to it. So I use the acronym SHAME, should have already mastered everything, to remind me, right? I should have already mastered everything. If I had already mastered everything, then I wouldn't be fired. If I had already mastered everything, then I would be perfect. Then I would be great. Then these things would never happen to me. Then my life would be complete and I would be successful. So what I've realized is often society makes us believe that being fired is a sign of failure. So let's challenge that belief, because yes, being fired is a big deal. And it's a thing because around me, again, like I mentioned, no one else had ever been fired. So it wasn't a sign of success and it wasn't an accolade or award that I was ready to talk about. But at the same time, failure, being fired, firing, since then I've fired myself from things because I've looked at it in a lighter way. I'm like, how can I flip that on its head and help myself move through, actually move through this, like with some dignity and some self-worth, than going into the dark places, right? And that's where shame takes me. It says I should have already mastered everything. And then it triggers really big feelings. And what I've also learned is that feelings are valid, but they are not facts. Feelings aren't facts. They are real, but we don't have to follow them. We don't have to take them literally. They're telling us that we're processing things, right? I'm feeling something. That is normal. That is natural. That's part of being human. At the same time, acting from that can cause more harm for me than good. That's something that I've really been working on myself every time, because we all have big emotions, at least for me. Like I definitely go global on the emotional level. And when it comes to my imposter syndromes and my perfectionism, that's where shame really starts to get in. And it's very insidious sometimes because it can really make me feel like, oh my gosh, Sarah, like you're the biggest loser. You got fired. Like you obviously don't know what you're doing. You're not a great employee. You're not a great teammate. Oh my gosh, right? Just beating up on Sarah. So remembering that perfect is imperfect, which means that part of life, and life is in session, is failure. And sometimes other people are going to tell me that I failed. And other places are going to tell me that this isn't the right fit. And that's part of the process of going back and forth. And that's something that has been really, really difficult for me to learn, especially in a moment where panic seems really big. And now I'm living in shame and I'm humiliated. I don't want to talk about anything. And instead of seeing this as an opportunity to check in with myself, I saw it as an opportunity to check out, which brings us to number 3. Number 3, the biggest mistake when getting fired is going it alone. Once the panic kicked in and then the shame was right up in my face, I initially wanted to hide. I wanted to pull the covers over my head. I wanted to not be around anybody. I didn't want to do anything. And honestly, that embarrassment, the humiliation, the shame was so big. And my emotions were incredibly global. And there was moments where I'm like, I'm worthless. I mean nothing. I'm a horrible person. This would never happen to a great person. This would never happen to a good employee. This would never happen to a great teammate. This would never happen to a person that actually knows what they're doing. I mean, that is intense levels of insidious negative thoughts and perfectionism, and all of that stuff was beating up on self, right? Again, but in that moment, right, trying to go it alone. So my thoughts only get me to where I am. So I honestly need better thoughts. And when I reached out, when I started working with someone that was a safe space, that was when I started realizing that the job or the position wasn't the perfect fit for me, that this team wasn't the greatest team for me, that it actually works both ways. So in that moment, that trust life, trust whatever you believe in is guiding you and looking out for you again, because if this is happening for me, not to me, then maybe whatever that is that I believe in is doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because when I really thought about it, it wasn't the best role. I felt stuck. I wasn't waking up every morning excited to go to work. I was actually really depressed. I was feeling sad, or I just didn't have a lot of energy. So being fired was the push that I needed. Was it awesome? No. Was it a birthday present? Oh, heck no. This was not that kind of experience. But in these kinds of experiences, in these ones that really make us look at ourselves, when I really sit with my truth, I wasn't in the best position, and I wasn't actually bringing my best. At the same time, that was totally fair. But I was also being complacent. If I was really being truthful with myself and really kind of onto my own tricks, I was really scared to jump out. I was really scared to take the next step that was kind of tapping me on the shoulder, which was for me was to go out on my own. And I've been in those situations where it's tapping me on the shoulder. I need to get a new job, right? And there's some kind of transition. But for this particular moment for me, it was when I really needed to go out on my own. And I didn't really have the courage, and I hadn't really put my big girl pants on to be like, you can do this, Sarah. That wasn't my thoughts. My thoughts were much more self-deprecating. They were much more self-hurting. Like they were much more like, again, I'm not enough. I don't do enough. I don't have enough. Imposter syndrome, and that perfectionism was really strong. So for me, after I got fired, the biggest thing that I made the mistake was going it alone. But the moment that I started asking for help, that crucial micro moment was the key to moving forward and getting through this, even when I didn't feel like it, right? Again, feelings aren't facts. They're real, but they're not telling me my truth. So at this moment, I realized my best thinking only gets me here, so I got to get better thinking. And what I also noticed is I started going to my tribe. I started talking to my friends, like I shared with you. I started talking to my family. And what I realized is that they started projecting on me the things that they were afraid of if they were getting fired. And that is super easy to do, right? Because we've been there. I care about them. I care about someone. They care about me. And they wanted to see me succeed. They wanted me to feel better. But at the same time, their thoughts, their emotions, their perspectives were getting in the way of them really helping me. And what I got was a lot of what they would do if they were in these situations. And a lot of that was more fear, more doubt, more panic, and more living in shame. And that wasn't helpful, even if their heart was in the great intention, as we talk about in a couple of my other videos, intention versus impact. Their intention was totally good. They definitely care about me. They definitely care about you. But the impact was negative because I was just feeling more of those darker things that were helping me to stay stuck and not move forward. So that brings me to the one simple life hack that changed it all for me. Again, out of all three of these big mistakes, this big game changer, this one life hack was get an accountability and an activation coach. So what is an accountability and an activation coach? It's a safe place where I can be witnessed, where the focus can be on me. The other person, the coach, that partner is not projecting on me. That is key. They're looking from a detached outside view and seeing what I really do need. Like what is Sarah's truth? What is Sarah feeling? What is Sarah, the emotions? What are you feeling? What are your emotions? Validating that is normal, validating that this is what happens, but it's not the place where I get to live. That's not who I am. I'm not a person who's been fired. I am Sarah Christine. I got fired. Now, what is this doing for me? Again, if it's happening for me and not to me, like, what does this mean? But for me, again, like I spoke about, it's really difficult to discern what that means when it's just me hiding, living in my shame and panicking, taking actions out of fear, taking actions out of doubt. Nothing good has come from that for me. Not one success has happened. But this simple life hack, when I found someone who's outside of my tribe, who's safe, and I felt that I could be vulnerable, this is somebody that actually gave me ideas, actually told me, you only get to send out 3 resumes. Could you imagine? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm going to send out hundreds of resumes, because she noticed that I had control issues. Yeah, could you relate? So I was trying to control, right? By acting out of fear, by acting out of doubt, acting out of panic and living in shame and trying to go it alone, right? That would be my actions. Instead, she helped me to see, to let go and actually allow this experience to happen and to process and to feel it through. It's not easy, right? If this were easy, then I understand, like, that's the biggest thing, is like everyone would feel great, right? If society was like, that's totally great, you failed, you got fired. That is not the reality in which we live in. And so for me to play the reality of the scene, then I really needed to have someone who was looking at me without those eyes, without those foggy glasses of like, oh my God, are you sure? Because I would be panicking if I were you. Instead, this person is like, shouldn't be panicking at all. This is a great opportunity. So let's look at what you really need. Like, let's look at what you really desire. And I have to tell you, so once I found that person who was making me accountable and who was helping me activate the next steps differently, days, I kid you not, days after partnering up, I had already started my own business and I had 2 consulting clients. Not kidding. I don't know how it works, but these kinds of things happen. I got a call from someone I hadn't worked with in over a decade, and they were like, are you consulting yet? Are you freelancing? Because I could really use your help. That was the universe doing for me what I could not do for myself. Now, this may not be the same situation every time, but it was that moment. And if you look for those, because I don't believe in coincidences, I think all these signs and everything is connected. So when I was starting to look for that, and the coach really helped me to keep as much as I could, my perspective, my mind, my heart positive, right? Let's start being pro Sarah Christine. Let's start being pro you. What does that look like? And how does that look like today? And what about treating ourselves? And what about taking care of myself differently through this process? That was really traumatic. And it made me feel really ashamed and all of those things. But that doesn't mean that it's me. So the gift was that I was able to slow down and reflect and then act without panic, without shame, and without going it alone. So if you are ever in this situation, if you've been fired or if you get fired, remember, it is not who you are. It is something that is happening for you. It's not happening to you. So don't panic. Don't live in shame. Don't go it alone. And the one solution, that one amazing life hack, is to find an accountability and activation coach that will work with you to get you through that. And I promise you, you'll turn that setback into a setup for a comeback.